What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are making our first fighter build, which is very exciting, seeing how normally when we build with fighter it's only a few levels and then we go and do something else. This time we get to actually focus on the fighter, and so that is a very exciting change for us. But let's see how we do that with the Arcane Archer this week. So before we do that though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, we are so close to 2,000 subscribers, but I need your help to get there, and most of you are not subscribed. So if all of you would just subscribe, then we'll get there. It'll be super easy, it'll be awesome, and I'm looking forward to it. I think we can do it, but I need your help. And then of course, share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. If you haven't seen Tuesday's video, we did our ranking video on the Arcane Archer, and so that'll be up in the icon above right there for you to check out before you watch this video. But in that video, we talked about how this is kind of a in the middle type of a subclass. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, definitely could use some buffs to get it into some better territory, but you know, it's not the worst thing out there. It's definitely not it's not some of them that we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks that are just straight up bad. So I'm excited to be able to build one of these with you. Today we have an example of one way to build this. Is this the most powerful way to build this? Probably not, but we're going to have fun with it, and we're going to solve one of the big mechanical issues with this subclass. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be great. Let's go ahead and jump in. Starting off, of course, with our race. I wanted to do something different this week. I know I say that a lot and then I end up going variant human or custom lineage, but I really did want to do something different this week. And the reason being, I really like the fact that the fighter gets more ASIs than normal. This allows me to be able to get in all of the feats that I want in a somewhat reasonable amount of time, while still getting my ASIs in, while still getting all of the things that I want. Yes, you know, we're giving up a feat at level 1 if we go with something else, but I wanted to do something fun this week. And so I went with something that I don't believe I have ever built around on the channel before, and that is an Eladrin. Now we are going to be choosing the Eladrin from Monsters of the Multiverse because it was buffed. Used to, you were locked into, I believe, wisdom with your phase step, and you were locked into however many times per day or however many damage. All that good stuff was locked in based on a different modifier. We are wanting to use intelligence as our modifier, and so that is what we are going to focus on. So we are going to make sure that we are focusing on intelligence here and using that for all of our phase step features. And there are a bunch of different awesome things that we get out of this. My personal favorite is the spring form, and that allows you to teleport a friend, which is really awesome and can definitely help them get into or out of some amazing situations. And so I definitely would recommend giving Spring Eladrin a try. But there are so many story reasons that you can tell with this, and like I said, a lot of people give the fighter a hard time for being too generic, for being just this one thing you just go up and you bonk. This allows so much storytelling just in the race itself that you can't tell me that this is not going to be an interesting character, right? I love the Eladrin. I have one in my Curse of Strahd game, and it is absolutely amazing. And so I wanted to feature it this week on our build. So with this, we get a +2 to one stat and a +1 to another, or 3 +1s. And I'm going to make the least optimal decision possible in this case, for fun, and you'll have to see this is what we're doing. And you could definitely go a different route than me. I'm doing this for fun, not for mechanical power, so just be aware. We are going to do the +1 and +2 option rather than the 3 +1s. This is in spite of the fact that on this channel we use a modified standard array of 17, 15, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Again, like I've said many times in this series, I can't reasonably predict what you do at your table. Some people do rolled stats, in which case it's random, so that doesn't help. Some people do point buy, but a lot of people don't. Some people do a regular standard array. Some people do their own thing. And so I just go with one consistent thing. That way all of my characters are consistent, and then it's up to you to modify based on what goes on at your table. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the +2 and +1 option, even though I have 3 odd numbers. You'll see why here in a little bit, but feel free to not do this and switch things around a little bit. And I will give an alternative way to do this that's probably more optimal, but I'm doing it for the sake of because I want to. For our stats, we are going to go with a 17 intelligence. That's right, we're not going with dexterity as our highest stat. You'll see why. Don't worry, don't freak out yet. It's okay. A 15 constitution, a 13 in strength, 12 dexterity, 10 wisdom, and 8 charisma. We're going to put our +1 in our constitution and our +2 in our strength modifier. That's right, we're putting it in strength in order to be able to wear heavy armor without having any kind of a downside. Now, I can definitely see the case for not wanting to do that because we have phase step with our race. That is a totally valid thing because that gives you some mobility despite your armor being what it is. So feel free to swap the strength and the dexterity and take 3 +1s. That's much more optimal, but I want heavy armor on this build and I don't want to suffer a movement penalty for the times that I do not have phase step. So this is what I'm going to do. Feel free to do it differently at your table. So there you go. We have a 17 intelligence, a 16 in constitution, and a 15 in strength. We are not going to boost strength anymore. And we're a bow user that has a 12 dexterity. And I'm just going to tell you, we're not going to be boosting it any higher than this. I know you're already thinking this is going to be the worst character you've ever built, Dapper. Hang on, we've got this. For equipment, we're going to take a longbow because that's the best weapon that we can choose with this subclass. We're going to take some chainmail, of course. That's the best armor that we can get as far as starting equipment. Of course, if you can get better armor, take that, and of course work up to full plate eventually. But obviously that's very expensive. I know you're not going to have that right now, just whenever you get it. And then of course 2 hand axes for something in melee, but we're not focused on it. And then whatever else you can pick up along the way, or whatever else you can really afford, honestly. So let's go ahead and start taking some levels. At level 1, we are going to be a fighter 1. I know, shocker, I'm taking the level that I claimed that I was going to start in. But like I've said in Tuesday's video, fighter is pretty much one of, if not the best starting classes. And so I really don't have a reason to start anything other than fighter. So we're going to start here. And so we're going to get a couple of things here. We're going to get a fighting style. And I think you already know which way I'm going with this. We're taking the archery fighting style. Duh, right? A +2 to hit is going to be awesome, especially when we are incredibly bad at being a fighter. So I think that this is going to be a story of you are a just run-of-the-mill guy. You're really, really smart, and you've been trying to get out on the battlefield, and you know you're all brains, you're no brawn. You're trying to figure it out, but like you're just not strong enough. You're not as strong as the other guys. You can't hit as well as the other people. All of that good stuff, but you're getting there, and hopefully you can figure out how to take those brains and use them to your advantage. Also at Fighter 1, we get Second Wind, which gives us a nice bonus action heal, which is very nice. Going to scale along with us because we are taking almost all of our levels in Fighter. We are going to multi-class a little bit on this in order to figure out some problems here. So then at level 2, we are not taking fighter. We are experimenting. We have become discouraged by the other people in our army or in our guards guild or whatever situation you happen to be coming from. And so we turn to our brain in order to make us a better fighter. We are going to take some artificer levels. So Artificer is kind of a strange choice, but there are some really key bonuses that we get out of going Artificer that really help us not only here at the early game, but also as we just survive throughout our entire lifetime. And I think it's really, really important that we take these levels super early rather than going for all the fighter stuff, because otherwise if we don't have this foundation, we're going to be kind of screwed. So at level 2, we're going to be an Artificer 1, and we get Magical Tinkering, which is You get to make little sounds and noises and smells and things out of little objects. I'm yet to find an amazing use for this feature. It's just mediocre. I talked about it in my Artificer guide up in the icon above right there. That was a long time ago. My goodness, my videos have hopefully come a long way since then. We also get spell casting, and so we get some intelligence-based spell casting. So again, this is why we have our intelligence so high, and there will be more reasons why we're focusing intelligence here later. As far as cantrips go, there are some awesome choices here. You're only going to get 2 of them, but I have a bunch of them that I would consider taking. Guidance is one that I probably would definitely take, and then I would choose one of the rest of these, and there are a bunch. Firebolt, Mage Hand, Mending, Shocking Grasp, and Spare the Dying. Shocking Grasp is especially interesting because it gives you a melee option that would also allow you to disengage essentially for free because it prevents reactions. So that's one thing that could get you out of melee pretty easily. And so I really like that option, but also Firebolt gives you a different option. But at the same time, we are a ranged character already, and so I don't want a cantrip showing up our weapons. So I'm not going to go with Firebolt probably, but it is there if you want it. Spare the Dying, of course, is always good, but you know, you could always just leave that to your healer as well. As far as first level spells, Absorb Elements is really good as a defensive option. Cure Wounds is again really nice. Fairy Fire is one that I would bring every single day. Absolutely. Grease as well. And then finally, maybe like Expeditious Retreat or Long Strider, maybe even Sanctuary. Any of those are really good for either get in, get out, or don't touch me. There are a lot of really good ways to use any of those spells. And so again, you can prepare all of these spells given the day. So just swap those out depending on whatever your party needs on a given adventuring day. At level 3, we're going to be an Artificer 2, and this is where we get our main bread and butter feature, Infuse Item. So we talked about the fact that there are not very many magic bows and how bows being magical are rare and hard to come across, and we're just going to make our own because we're an Artificer, so why not? So what we can do here is take 4 of the huge list of infusions, again that's in the Artificer guide, and we can use 2 of those at any given time. Now, we're not going to take very many more levels in Artificer, so don't worry about any of the 6th or later features or anything like that. We're not going to get anywhere near that far, so just these few beginning ones. So I would suggest taking Enhanced Defense, Homunculus Servant, Mind Sharpener, and Repeating Shot. Now, Repeating Shot is one that I would leave on all the time on your weapon. This makes your weapon magical, which is awesome. It also produces its own ammo, so you never have to buy arrows again, or go around and scavenge them, or remember the fact that you need to scavenge them to get half of your arrows back, and then remember to buy more arrows. Nobody ever does that, but it's okay. Actually, my rogue does, but she's special. She's great. But anyway, that allows you to have a +1 weapon already at level 3. That's really good. Yes, it negates one of our features later on as an Arcane Archer, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it because we really want to have that magic as early as we possibly can, and this is a great way to guarantee that. Enhanced Defense is one that I would probably use for now, and then later on, I think I'm going to switch over to Homunculus Servant, and you'll see why here in just a little bit. At Artificer 3, we get to choose our subclass, and I think you all know exactly where I'm going with this, because really only one subclass kind of stands out here as far as what I have to do. And we're going to go with the Battlesmith. So the Battlesmith gives us many amazing boosts just by picking this at level 3. And it feels really good to be getting all of these things. Number 1, we get Battlesmith spells. That gives us access to Shield and Heroism, both pretty good spells, actually. Shield especially. Shield is amazing. On top of our already heavy armor, we can now add a +5 to our armor class. That is amazing, and I love that. That's awesome. You're going to be really hard to hit, and that is amazing, of course. Battle Ready is where it's at, though, because now we can use intelligence to attack with our weapon as long as it's magical. And wouldn't you know it, we have an infusion on that bow. So our bow now is magical, and we can use intelligence in order to fire our bow. So now we are switching over to our 17 instead of using our 12. And so that's going to help us a lot. And so now we are going to want to start boosting that intelligence so that we can be hitting more often. But like I said, we're going for laying the groundwork for all of these things. And so all of it is slowly starting to come together. We also get our Steel Defender, which we're not going to get any more levels in Artificer, spoilers. So this thing's going to be really frail. So I'm not going to necessarily assume that it's going to be around all the time. However, this does not mean that this thing is useless or that you should not use it for role-playing purposes or even in combat. Yes, it'll get knocked out frequently, but it's okay. It really is okay. It's a really nice thing to have around. It can really help you to survive as long as your DM is not targeting it constantly, which, I mean, it's not going to be a threat. So as long as you are posing more of a threat than your Steel Defender, which is going to be most of the time, you're probably going to be okay, and your DM may allow it to survive a little bit longer, in which case, good for you, because we're going to make good use of it, again, here in just a little bit. We get also right tool for the job here, as well as tool proficiency. Again, two really cool artificer features that are okay. Tool proficiency, right tool for the job may come in handy every now and then, but I'm really here for all the battlesmith stuff, and so that is really that's our focus. Now that I have that, even with an ASI right there, I'm going to go back to fighter, because if I go any more levels in Artificer, I miss out on my second round of Action Surge at level 20. And I do not want to do that. So we are going fighter at this point, and we are not looking back, and we're going fighter the rest of the way. At level 5, we're going to be a fighter 2, and this is going to give us Action Surge. So yes, we normally would be getting extra attack here, and yes, we could have gotten extra attack from Artificer, but again, I want my second round of Action Surge, so I can't go any farther into the Artificer class. And Action Surge is something that you really don't want to be putting off anyway, because it is just that good. Then at Fighter 3, we get Arcane Archer lore and Arcane Shot. So this is where we choose our infamous subclass, and we get proficiency in one of the skills that are listed, as well as a couple of cantrips, which is awesome. And we get our Arcane Shot. Now we get 2 choices right now, and we will get more choices as we level up. The 2 that I'm going to suggest taking right off the bat are going to be Shadow Arrow and Grasping Arrow. Now, Shadow Arrow is going to be kind of the main thing that's going to kick off everything for us, and we're going to use it to great effect as we go on. We're also going to use Grasping Arrow, because Grasping Arrow has a lot of utility for making sure that somebody doesn't run away, or making sure that someone does not approach you or your squishy friend. So there are a lot of really good ways to use that as well. And because we are focusing on our intelligence for our attacks, this means that our saving throws that are involved with these are going to be that much more reliable. And that's really why I wanted to focus on intelligence here. It's making us much less mad, and it's actually allowing us to be pretty effective at what we want to do. Again, we could have boosted our intelligence higher at the beginning, left our strength at 13, or even had our dex there. It doesn't really matter, but I really want to make sure that we have heavy armor to protect ourselves, and now it is time to start racking up the damage and start adding on to what it is that we can do. So at Fighter 4, we get our first ASI or feat. The Eladrin was one thing that I really wanted to focus on here, and there's this funny thing about Eladrins. They're technically elves, which means that we qualify for Elven Accuracy. And so that is what we are going to go ahead and take. So that is a half feat. So we can go ahead and bump our intelligence up to an 18, which is awesome, which now allows us to roll at essentially double advantage. We get to roll 3 dice if we already have advantage on an attack roll that uses that stat. And when you know it, as long as we have our infusion going, we're using intelligence to attack, and it also is on our spells, but we're not going to be able to reliably get advantage on that as often outside of, Action Surge with Fairy Fire and that sort of thing. So now what do we do now that we have this? How do we make ourselves have advantage? There are a couple of ways that we can do this. Number one, we have our Steel Defender. And so on our bonus action, we can have our Steel Defender take the help action and use that on us. It's not going to be doing very much damage, okay? And it's better off that the thing stands right next to us anyway, so that others have disadvantage on attacks on us. So I would keep the Steel Defender planted firmly right next to you, and it take the help action every turn, as long as you're not using Second Wind or some other bonus action. You can use your bonus action to tell it to take the help action on you. Now you have advantage on your first attack on your turn. This will allow you to fire off a shadow arrow. Assuming that the save is failed, then every other attack that you fire will have advantage, meaning Elven Accuracy is going to pop every single time, which is going to allow you to pile on all of the crits. If you happen to crit, you've got a huge chance of critting because you're rolling 3 different dice. So that's really cool as well. So we've got a really interesting way to get advantage. And our save DC isn't bad either because, again, we focused on our intelligence. So overall, we're looking pretty good right now. But I want to make it even better. How do we do that? Well, of course, Fighter 5, extra attack. So now we can do this a bunch more. So first attack, we have our Steel Defender have used the help action on us. Now the way that this has to work is that you control it on your bonus action and then it takes the help action. So technically you would need like a round of setup to do this, but you can still do that. If for some reason your DM starts knocking out your Steel Defender a lot, this is where I would consider taking the Homunculus Servant out instead, or both at the same time. And here's why, because they both work on the same rules. You can only control one or the other on your bonus action. Therefore, whichever one you did not tell to use the help action on you is taking the dodge action, right? So you can then have your Homunculus Servant like on your shoulder or just near you. You can then have your Steel Defender right next to you taking the help action until your DM decides to knock it out. Then you've got your Homunculus Servant as backup, right? We're going to make this more reliable in a little bit, but we're doing the best that we can given our limited resources. So at Fighter 6, we need to take the opportunity to make this even better. How do we do that? With a familiar. So we are going to take the Ritual Caster feat. Of course, you could gain Find Familiar through Magic Initiate, but I'm going to take Ritual Caster because we can also take Unseen Servant. We're going to have so many things that are just at our disposal. We're going to have a familiar, we're going to have our servant, we're going to have our Steel Defender, and we're going to have an Unseen Servant. So we are just the army of pets. And it's going to be awesome, and they are all here to take the help action for us. So now that we have Find Familiar, it kind of changes the way that we think about this, because now we can effectively give ourselves advantage on both attacks during any given turn, so long as all of our friends are alive. You might be thinking, well, Dapper, how are you going to do that? You can only help action on the very next attack, right? Help doesn't work that way. You can't help someone 2 times in a turn and then it go on the next 2 actions. It's just the very next one. And to that, you would be correct. However, there is a sneaky little way that we can get around this. And so here is what I'm going to suggest that we do. During our quote unquote setup round, we are going to have our Homunculus Servant or our Steel Defender take the ready action. And they are going to ready the help action for when we make an attack. So we are going to hold that action to take the help action when we make our first attack. Our first attack will be receiving the help action from our familiar. So with our familiar, we have the help action, fire at advantage with Elven Accuracy. Once we do that, our Homunculus Servant jumps in and takes the help action, which then gives us an advantage on the very next attack we make immediately with extra attack. Now, obviously you don't need to do this if you're using, say, Shadow Arrow, and the Shadow Arrow were to land, then you've got advantage anyway, but that's probably also the time when you're action surging, so that's another thing entirely. But this is just something you can do over and over and over and over again for both of your attacks. Now, obviously we're going to end up having more attacks than what we can do with this eventually, but still having 2 attacks with advantage almost no matter what is pretty awesome. And I think that it's a really, really fun way to do this. Is it optimal? Probably not, but it's fun. And that's what we're going for on this channel, is a fun build. So let's go ahead and move on here. At Fighter 7, we get Magic Arrow, which we've kind of already negated, but oh well. But we also get Curving Shot, and Curving Shot will allow us to, even if we somehow manage to miss with our double advantage, rolling 3 dice, we still could then roll again and try to hit something else. So that's awesome. That's definitely super, super helpful. We also get one more choice of Arcane Shot, and I'm going to suggest the Bursting Arrow at this point. But again, there are several of them that are really good. Take your pick. It's whatever you want to do. At Fighter 8, we get another ASI or a feat, and there are 2 things that we could do here. Number 1, we could boost our intelligence and max that out. That makes a lot of sense to me, and it's probably the way that you would build this optimally. But you know what? I want to take the Sharpshooter feat because it's right there. If we're rolling with double advantage, rolling 3 dice almost every attack, I want to have +10 on every one of those attacks, especially then if we action surge on something that is within our Shadow Arrow, and I want to be able to just rake on the damage like crazy. And that is what this does, right? We have advantage, we have a +2 from the archery fighting style. We're gonna be hitting most of the time, right? This just allows us to just plow through our enemies, and it is going to be awesome to do that. At Fighter 9, we get our first use of Indomitable, which allows us to reroll a save. It's fine, it is what it is. I mean, it's nothing exciting, but mechanically, it's decent, right? At Fighter 10, we get another Arcane Shot, and I'm going to suggest taking the Enfeebling Arrow. Again, you could switch all of these around if you wanted to, but totally up to you. At Fighter 11, we get our second round of extra attack, so now we do have more attacks than we are being given with our familiar plus our either Homunculus Servant or our Steel Defender. And so, you know, that's fine though. I think it's totally fine to be able to still have advantage on 2 of our 3 attacks given a turn. And then of course, if you action surge, again, Shadow Arrow coming through there. I think that's still going to be really, really awesome. We then get another feat or ASI at Fighter 12. It's level 15, and we're finally going to max out our intelligence. It has been forever. It has been way too long. But I wanted to make sure that we are being an effective archer. And it's hard to fit all this stuff in, right? Again, it probably would have been optimal to go with a race that was not the Eladrin. But again, I wanted to have Elven accuracy, and the Eladrin made a lot of sense for this build. Then at Fighter 13, we get our second round of Indomitable, pretty awesome. At Fighter 14, we get an extra ASI or a feat, and this is a tough one. There are a few options that I would consider here. Number 1, you could take a +2 in Constitution. This would, of course, boost our hit point total, which is good. It would also help us with concentrating on something like Fairy Fire, which again is a great way to give ourselves advantage. That's another thing you could do. Or you could consider taking either the Crossbow Expert or the Gunner feat. The reason why you might consider this is only for one part of the feat, which is why I'm on the fence on this. And it allows you to not have disadvantage when you are within melee range. This means that you could effectively cast Grease and be up next to someone when they fall, and then just fire a bunch of arrows into them point blank with advantage there. Then you don't have to worry about help actions or anything like that too. You don't have to worry about anybody failing the save on your Shadow Arrow, although then they have to not fail the save on your Grease. But I mean, then you get to choose which saving throw you want to target. So I mean, that's good. Options are good. So that's one to consider. I don't think it's the best option out there, but it's there should you want it. At Fighter 15, we're going to get Ever Ready Shot, which just gives us one more use of our arcane shot should we roll initiative without any. We also get one last type of shot, and I'm just going to suggest the Beguiling Shot. Again, it's really up to you, and there aren't a ton more that I really care to take anyway. I don't think you're ever going to use Beguiling Shot, to be honest, especially this late in the game. I would focus much more on the Shadow Arrow. I think that's going to be your real bread and butter throughout this whole thing. At level 19, we get one more ASI or feat, and you could take another, or for the first time, a +2 in Constitution. You could take the Tough feat just to give yourself the HP. You could also take the Poisoner feat, and the Poisoner feat makes some sense to me as well, although to take Poisoner feat at level 19, it is incredibly late to be doing this. This would allow you to deal a little bit of extra damage with your weapon by dipping your arrows into some poison. Now, these arrows obviously would not work with your repeating shot infusion. You would have to load your own ammo, but you're also very limited on how many arrow tips you can actually coat with this. And so you're a little limited in how many of those even work out in the first place. So overall, I think it still works out. You just fire the poison arrows until you run out. You're still getting the bonus from Magic Shot, which we weren't using normally. So that's still fine. I think that's still good either way. I think that it could work. It could work. Poison is obviously something that is very highly resisted or immune. And so a lot of creatures are just not going to worry about it, which is fine, which is why it's definitely optional in my opinion. But who knows? You may run into a bunch of things that are weak to poison, in which case your DM is incredibly generous to you because that is very rare. And finally, at 20th level, Fighter 17, we get our second round of Action Surge and our third round of Indomitable. So that is all for the build, but we're going to do our honorable mentions here in just a second. Let me know what you think down below. I think this is a fun build. Is it optimal? Probably not, but you know what? We don't really go for that here on this channel. We're not here just to min-max every single thing. I want to build something that's effective, but more importantly, that's fun. And I think that this would be super, super fun while still being mechanically satisfying. We are kind of painted into a corner with just what the Arcane Archer is, and it's going to feel really bad when things pass the saving throw, but I wanted to make sure that they fail that saving throw as often as possible with getting our intelligence up, with making everything based on our intelligence so we're not having to split our stats 3 different ways. That's really what I wanted to focus on here. And so if you have any suggestions for how you would change this build, let me know down below. I'm sure there will be many, and I'm ready for it. For our honorable mentions, the first one that came to my mind was the High Elf. The High Elf would have given us another spell, which could have been interesting, but really we didn't need it just because we ended up going with the Artificer dip. But definitely something that we could have considered. The Shatter Kai was one that I very, very much wanted to take for the flavor of the Shadow Arrow. It made a lot of sense to me, and you have a teleportation type thing. But I just liked the way that the Eladrin did it a little bit better in this situation. And I just liked how colorful it is rather than necessarily how doom and gloom and borderline evil it kind of is. And so I wanted to go with a completely different flavor for this build than the Shatter Kai offered. And finally, the Monsters of the Multiverse Kobold. The Monsters of the Multiverse Kobold would of course be a great way to give ourselves advantage on a bunch of attacks back to back to back, being a fighter. Now obviously we wouldn't be able to stack on something like Elven Accuracy with this, but giving ourselves advantage does help with Sharpshooter, and so we could have done that from 10 feet away, fire a bunch of arrows, and then run away. So we could have done that, and that could have been a lot of fun, but I still think that the Elven Accuracy route is going to be a little bit more effective for you. As far as other feats to possibly take, Artificer Initiate or Magic Initiate based on the Wizard could have been good. Again, that could have been a way to get a hold of Find Familiar. or a bunch of other different spells that we got. Again, we took Artificer, so we really didn't need the Artificer Initiate feat, but originally we actually took a Wizard dip in this class originally. And so that's where that kind of came from. I also looked at the Piercer feat. The Piercer feat would have also been really nice because we would have been critting somewhat often. And so this would have comboed with that really nicely. But it also made our ASIs a little bit weird. And so that was interesting. I would say Piercer probably has a place late in the build if you were to not worry about the heavy armor route. I think that Piercer could make a difference in that case, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. And then finally, for other classes, of course, the Rogue. The Rogue was at the top of my list, and I came very close to making this an Arcane Trickster build as well. Again, focused on intelligence, giving us several magical abilities that we could use in order to boost our effectiveness. However, it did not allow us to attack with intelligence, and so we still were going to end up being a little bit mad. But sneak attack though at the same time. So, you know, it would have been really, really nice to have that, but I think that it's a little bit better the way that we did it. And finally, the Ranger. We could have gone Ranger and we could have gone Beastmaster. This would have given us another friend rather than the Steel Defender or the Homunculus Servant, which could have been there to take the help action. Again, we wouldn't have taken very many levels of Ranger, and so that would have allowed us to be a little bit more effective there. However, then we would have had to also have our Wisdom be decent, and so then we would have needed Dex, Intelligence, Wisdom, and then we would have wanted Constitution too. So that would have split us up a little bit too much, in my opinion. Gloomstalker also could have been good for the damage, but like I said, I think that would have been spreading our stats just a little bit too thin. So that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Banneret, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Also known as the Purple Dragon Knight, gotta be one of the best named subclasses out there. Is it the most effective? I guess we'll have to find out then. And if you want to find out what I think about it, make sure you're subscribed. Again, we are so close to 2,000, and so I need your help to get there. Help us to reach that by the end of this year. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.